outrageous. And we're going to be looking through the book of John. So it's a book in the Bible, and it talks about Jesus' life on earth. So we're going to unpack that. We've just read what we're going to be looking at tonight in the evening talk. And it might seem a little bit confusing, so hopefully these talks will help you understand that and unpack it for you. And then when you go to your huddle groups into your dorms tonight, you will unpack it a little bit more. So what I'm going to do to start, you might not be used to it, I'm just going to pray. And when I pray, it means I say some of this stuff might be a little bit tricky to understand, so I'm just asking God to help us to understand it. So I'm just going to pray now. Lord God, we just thank you for this opportunity to explore who you are. Help us tonight to understand you and understand what you're trying to tell us through your word. Amen. All right, that's outrageous. Have you ever heard that? Anyone say that? Outrageous. Now you might have said it when you're playing sport, and maybe you saw it when someone pulled off an amazing piece of skill. 360 dunk, maybe if you're a hockey player, 3D dribble, tennis, cross-court backhand. That's pretty technical, is it, Herman? I've got that right, Jess? Is that pretty tough to do? Just an amazing piece of skill. Maybe you've heard, or maybe you've heard someone make an outrageous claim about their life. And it's easy to do that, right, isn't it? It's easy for me to just say, make a claim, so I'm going to do this. But backing it up with evidence, that's another thing. I can say all I want, but trying to back it up is another thing. I remember when I was 13 or 14, playing cricket, really wanting to make 100, make a century. And what was one of my solutions? Well, I'd tell my mate at school, Carl, who also played cricket with us, we'd say, oh yeah, what are you going to do? Sometimes our games are after school. What are you going to do after school? Oh, yeah, I'm going to make 100 today. Definitely, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I'll let you know that I've never made a claim and said I'm going to get 100 and go out and get it, and I've actually backed it up. So it's easy to make that claim, but it's hard to back up. So maybe you can think now of an outrageous claim that's been made in sport, or perhaps even when you're walking back to your dorms tonight, you can make an outrageous claim about your team this week in Team Challenge and how you're going to overcome everything and you're going to pull off some mad skills. So that's our theme for the week. Jesus starts in John's Gospel by making an outrageous claim. And as we look in the talks, we're going to take a look at some of the outrageous claims that Jesus made. You saw in the video earlier, some of those came up. And in this book of John, he makes these crazy claims about himself. He says, I'm the bread of life. I'm the light of the world. I'm the gate. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the resurrection and the life. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. On the surface, some of those you might not understand, but as we look at them closely in the week, you might start to say that those claims are slightly bit arrogant. And when we do look at these claims this week, we're going to see how outrageous they are. But we're going to see that whenever Jesus makes an outrageous claim, he backs it up with an outrageous act. And that outrageous act often reveals how outrageously God loves us. So that's the framework we're taking this week. We're looking in the evening talks at Jesus' claim, and then when we go to our huddle groups, we're going to unpack about his act that backed up his claim, and that's going to point to God's outrageous love for us. Often when we read a book, I don't know if you've ever done it, you flick to the back of the book to find out what's happened, and I don't know if you do that, just check your hand in the air if you've ever done that. So in John's Gospel, if you do that in the book of John, talking about Jesus' life, if you flick to the end, it says this, it says, Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, or Saviour, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So as we read what John's written in his book about Jesus' life, if we understand why he's written it, that helps us as we look through it this week. And when we read this, we know that John, he unashamedly wrote this book to help us identify who Jesus is and the reason why he came. He writes that you might believe in him. And as you believe in him, that you might gain life. And So as you believe in him, you'd understand him, and as you understand him, you'd gain life. And so John actually writes this unashamedly, that our lives might be changed and that we might really live. So when we're playing our sport, whether we're at home, whether we're with wherever we are in our life, in our school, our prayer for you this week is that you might know what real living is, that you might know Christ, and you might know, as John's writing here, you might know what he's done for you. Alright, there's enough of me talking. I'll give you a little brain break. Talk to the person next to you. And I want to, you might not know the person next to you yet, but find out if the person next to you has a nickname, and a nickname with a story behind it. Okay? Okay, go for it. You've got 30 seconds. Be interested later on to hear some of those. But in sport, isn't it, we love to use nicknames. I wonder if you know who these are. I wonder if you know what their first name is, actually. It's Aldrich Woods, Tiger Woods. This one I'm not sure if you'll know, but Tony Lockett. Plugger, good. Greg Norman, Great White Shark. Ian Thorpe, Torpedo. Irvin Johnson, Magic Johnson. So there's a heap of nicknames out there, and the best nicknames aren't just like me, just Lauro, adding an O at the end, or Jono, or the best nicknames are ones that are shorter, not just a shorter version of the name, but actually describes the person and what they do. And as we've been reading in this passage in John, John introduces us to Jesus being the Word, okay? And when we unpack this nickname, it's going to help us understand who Jesus is. So if we flip to John, I'm just going to read John chapter 1, verse 1 to 4 again, and it says this. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." So you see there, it's talking about the Word. Now, when this passage was written, the readers at the time would have been Jews, and they would have been waiting hundreds of years for the arrival of this Saviour, of Jesus. So for them, the Word was a common way of referring to God. So they knew that through the Word, the whole world was created. And so it's a bit like these days when people say they believe that there's something out there, or they believe something created it, or they believe there's a life force. That's what they knew when they said the Word. They knew he was talking about God. So if we look at our key sentences for tonight, we see the life force, or the Word, is Jesus. So if we look at John, verse 14, it says this. It says, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." This is the key of what I'm talking about tonight. It's phenomenal. It's saying that the Word, the life force, became flesh. God became flesh. He became human. He became like you and me, and he lived among us on the earth. And it's saying that that Word, the Word is Jesus. It's saying that Jesus is the life force. It's saying that Jesus, it's phenomenal when you actually think about it. This is Jesus, this is whole God who created the whole of the universe, coming and walking around as a man. But if you think about one thing tonight, just ponder that, because that's outrageous. See, Jesus didn't come to us alive as a baby. Jesus didn't come alive as a baby at Christmas. He didn't come alive at Christmas. Jesus existed from the beginning of time. And Jesus was God, and he became an authentic human being. That's incredible. That's outrageous. God walking here on earth. You can see him, you can talk to him, and that is Jesus, the Word. So as we read this passage now, I'm going to read a little sentence. It says this. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." So if you look on the screen there, you'll see the red line. So we're going to read this all together. And when you see the red letters, the red words, replace that with the word Jesus. Okay? You reckon you can do that? Okay. So here we go. "In the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God, and was God. Was God in the beginning. Through all things were made, Without Jesus, nothing was made that has been made. Okay, so that helps us understand it a bit more. Now, lots of people, as I've touched on already, believe there's a life force out there. Okay, believe there's some sort of being out there, there's something that's created it all. But I wonder if you've ever thought what that's like. What is God like? Well, the exciting thing this week is we're actually going to find that out because Jesus is fully God. When we look at God, when we look at Jesus, we see God and we see his full brilliance. So it says, doesn't it? It says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. This is in the sentence number 14. It says, we have seen the glory, his glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Okay? So Jesus is God. Some people say, I'll believe in God if he shows himself to me. But here, John is saying that if we want to understand who God is, what he's like, just look at Jesus. Look at Jesus who lived on this earth and read about him in this book. Listen to his outrageous claims. Consider them. Consider his miracles. Then you'll see. Then you'll see and understand what God is like. You'll understand and be able to know this life force. You'll be able to know the God of all creation. You'll be able to have a relationship with God. And that's phenomenal. That is outrageous. And now you may have picked it up in what I just read as well. He gives Jesus another nickname, and he calls him the one and only. And John is saying saying that Jesus is the one and only way to know God. And as I said, that's an outrageous claim. So as I finish tonight, as you head into your huddle groups, my question is, do you believe it? Do you believe that tonight, that Jesus is the one and only, the only way to know God? You could be one of three people this week. Number one, you could be someone who's here just for the sport. You're not interested in Jesus' claims at all. And that's fine. It is totally fine. But if you are that person, just be patient with us as we spend some time exploring who Jesus is in the huddle groups and in the evening meetings. Or you could be, number two, you could be someone who is interested in Jesus, but you're not too sure if he's the one and only way to know God. Or you could be number three, you could be saying, okay, I know who Jesus is, I know he's the one and only way to God, but this week I just want to be assured of that. I want to be assured that I know who he is. So I wonder where you're at tonight on the start of this Sports Plus week. So yeah, consider that tonight. Consider where you stand before God. Consider whether you believe that Jesus was really God and came to earth as a man. Okay? So as I said, this week in the evening meetings, we're going to present these outrageous claims that Jesus made. Then we're going to head to our huddle groups and unpack how the outrageous claim is backed up with evidence of an outrageous miracle that Jesus performs. And that will help us to unpack God's amazing love for us. So tonight, as you head to your huddle groups, you're going to unpack Jesus' first miracle, and he turned water into wine. And this is the miracle that Jesus chose to introduce himself as God to the world. So it's important to remember that when we look at these miracles in our huddle groups, that these miracles, they're not just like party tricks, they're not just to show off. Jesus is actually telling us something about himself. He's giving us a sign to what God is like. And as we look at miracles as well, we start to see that because Jesus is God, he overrides nature's laws to show us something. They're signposts to show us what God is like, and they point to us to God's outrageous love. So, we're going to have a bit of time of worship in a minute, but as you head to your huddle groups, consider how Jesus, when he turns water into wine, how that outrageous act backs out the outrageous claim that Jesus is the one and only. Why would Jesus introduce himself to the world with this miracle?